Once it starts to do the stream, you'll see on the top left-hand corner, it'll say.
I'm seeing it right now. Yep.
All righty.
Excellent. I think we should be all good.
Started. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Wendy, for hosting it and for helping us troubleshoot this. Again, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome all attendees who are maybe listening or streaming this live. Of course, this is part of our National Reentry Week. Central Ohio is playing a huge role in this. I want to give a special thank you to all of the participants and organizations here in Central Ohio who have really contributed to this week-long event. A special shout out goes to the Franklin County Justice Policy and Programming, Johnny Turner and his team. Thank you again for putting this together. I would also like to thank our panelists today. They represent some of the largest new American communities here, as well as entrepreneurs and individuals who had touch with the criminal justice system. The moderator for today is myself, Dr. Hannah Douali. I am an educator, over 15 years of experience. I'm also a technology enthusiast who's really passionate about ensuring that we have technology training and equitable access to opportunity here in Central Ohio. One of my principal focus right now is to ensure that folks that are entering our community as restored citizens have all of the digital skills they need to be able to find a worthwhile employment. With that being said, I want to move on to our session. Our session today is, of course, looking at how the new American community here in Central Ohio is growing, thriving, and discussing some of the challenges from the lens of the criminal justice system. Again, I have the pleasure of having three individuals who give us a nice overview of the respective organizations. I would like to start with Mr. Mahdi Warsame, who is a lifelong community activist, a representative of the Somali community, probably one of the largest communities here in Central Ohio. We also have here Mr. Bowen, who is a representative of the Nepalese and Bhutanese community, again, a rapidly growing community in Central Ohio. And last but certainly not least, I have with me Mr. Ibrahim Osman, who's going to give us experience as a new American in dealing with the criminal justice system and how he has successfully navigated that to ultimately become an entrepreneur and launch his own business. So we have a cracking team of panelists here. I look forward to hosting and moderating this event. Without further ado, I'm going to give Mr. Mahdi Warsame to give us a brief introduction about himself and the Somali community here in Central Ohio, give us some statistics in terms of the size, how long they've been here, and the level of integration they have experienced here in Central Ohio. So Mr. Mahdi Warsame, please feel free to join us.
Thank you, Hannah. So in terms of my experience, I was a caseworker for delinquent youth for a long time. I helped them to navigate the juvenile court system if they have cases pending. I attended many court hearings on behalf of my clients. When I worked for the Rosman Center and later for the Bakay Ranch, I became an outreach coordinator. I used to teach the Somali culture to the service providers in Central Ohio, including the juvenile court as well as the police, the sheriff's office, many service providers in Central Ohio. I also served many boards, local boards, including the YMCA, Hilltop YMCA, Children's Services Advisory Council, and many others. So I do have, I dealt with the youth, the juvenile criminals background around 10 years beginning from 2012 and beyond. I also happen to be the board member and the chairman of the board of one of the mosques in Central Ohio. When it comes to the Somali community in Central Ohio, there's no statistics that can tell us exact number because when they count the census forms, there's no place for Somali, at least before. I don't know about the new one, but in the past, there was none to mark as a Somali. So either people mark other or African American or what have you. So I don't know the exact number, but the estimates are around 45,000 in Somali new immigrant Somali community, including those of the second generation. It's around 45,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but that's the rough estimate, including the Somali Bantus who are concentrated on the west side of the city. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marty, for that brief introduction. And for those listeners of ours who are new to the community, can you give us a little bit in terms of their historical presence here in Central Ohio? Do you have an idea when they arrived here and what's their level of integration so far?
Yes. Before 1990, Somalis could not qualify what we call the resettlement programs here in the United States, refugee resettlement programs, because Somalia before that was mostly stable. After when the Civil War broke in December of 1990, when the U.S. troops arrived in Mogadishu in December of 1992, from there on, the Somalis qualified what's called refugee resettlement programs. So many Somalis qualified to come to the United States as refugees. So there was no large Somali community in Central Ohio or in any other place in the United States before 1992. So through the resettlement program, the refugee resettlement program, some families were resettled here in early 1990s. And then Columbus became somehow a magnet for the other Somalis from the other cities to come to Central Ohio for different reasons, mostly to join other Somalis and stick together in the same neighborhoods. But there were also housing opportunities, there were employment opportunities. So many Somalis who were resettled in the South, for example, or the Pacific West, or the Northwest, moved to Central Ohio to have a more support system because they would like to be living next to each other, have their own ethnic food, have their own mosques. So they stick together in a particular states. That's one of the support systems for the Somali community in the United States. They always move to one locality together, regardless where they arrive at the beginning. So that's why you have a large community in Minnesota. That's why you have a large community, for example, in Central Ohio. That's why you have a large Somali community in Seattle, Washington. They would like to come together and live in the same neighborhood, help each other, support each other. So not all of them were settled by the refugee agencies. Many of them have what we call a second-hand or second immigration. They move from other states to Central Ohio. And that means we are doing something right because people like to come to Central Ohio. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We'll definitely come back and ask you more about the Somali community. I would like to give Mr. Bowen the opportunity to also join us. Mr. Bowen represents the Nepalese and Bhutanese community. Mr. Bowen, please introduce yourself and give us a brief description about your community as a community leader. Thank you.
Right. Namaste and thank you. Honad, did I pronounce your name correct?
Yeah, I pronounced it very well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for this opportunity. And again, my name is Bhuvan Pakurel. I am, again, since you asked me to talk about the community, I'm a former refugee from Bhutan. So talking about Bhutan, there are many members in the Central Ohio that did not know where Bhutan is because it's very, very minor, small country in the world map. So it is in Southeast Asia between India and Tibet, very small country. And mostly known by Mount Everest, but it is not in Bhutan, but close to Bhutan, the Mount Everest is there, so that people relate it to that country. About myself, and our community, we were in Bhutan for many centuries, to be particular from 1680. But in 1990, again, like Mehdi mentioned, 1990 was not a good year. I think there are a lot of things happened in 1990s in Somalia, and again, USSR, Russia, and again, Bhutan, and many other countries. I think many things happened. The same process, the government of Bhutan forced, the king particularly forced non-Drukpa, people who are not like himself, were forced out of that country and forced into a refugee camp because they did not belong to his culture, his faith system, and his language and his dress. So in total, 1/6 of the population was forced out of the country and they were in a refugee camp. So from 1992 to 2009, we were in the refugee camp, particularly for me and my family. We were there for 19 years, particularly 18 years. Then we were resettled in the United States in 2009. So there are people in the community who were there for many years, like from almost 26 years, some of them, but at least for us, it is 18 years. So coming to the United States and getting into resettled and the process, all those things started. About myself, we were in Colorado first, then moved to Ohio in 2014. And personally, our family and myself, we became a citizen in 2016. And in 2000, I work in a various different organizations as a volunteers or as a paid position. I did many different works like many other people. And 2019, I decided to run for a public office, and I ran for city council in city of Reynoldsburg, and I got elected in 2019 November, being the first Bhutanese American to be elected in public office in the United States. I'm the first one to be elected. So that is one thing that I do as a city council member. I have my own responsibility in city of Reynoldsburg. And also I serve in various different boards, like Mehdi was telling. I was thinking, I wrote down some of the things that I am doing. So I'm a member of the board in the local YMCA here in Reynoldsburg. I'm also a member of the MAC board. I'm also a board chair for our Mandir here in Reynoldsburg. So many other things I do in the process. So in the same way, maybe a follow-up question, you'll be asking me, what is the number for the Bhutanese community in Central Ohio? So answer probably would be the same thing as Mehdi mentioned. Like I think I don't know for Somali communities, but I think many of them will be marked as African American. So for us, I know for sure it is like everybody will be marked as Asian. So and definitely we are part of the Asia, but Asian in the United States, I believe is mostly understood as a Chinese American. But culturally, we are from the same geographical region, but we are very different with culture and our traditions are different. So to find the actual number of Bhutanese American in the Central Ohio, again, is very difficult. We have an anecdotal number. And also we have a small research done by OSU in 2017. And according to their research, they found that the number of Bhutanese American in Central Ohio at that time, it was done in June of 2017, was between 23,000 to 27,000. That is their number. And 17 to 21, again, there's a big influx of folks are moving from Colorado or Texas and New Mexico and many other Georgia. Many people are moving to Central Ohio. So our own community level anecdotal number, not based on fact, not backed by fact, I just want to make it very clear, is around 38,000 people in Central Ohio. That is that we, some people might go to 60. I don't know what is the basis, but I have some basis of telling the 38,000. So that is the number that we are thinking of.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bhuvan. You're absolutely right. I was going to ask you about the numbers. It's similar to what Mahdi said. What is the draw for the Bhutanese community for Central Ohio? It's a great place to live, no doubt. I'm curious.
So there are two things. One is personal to myself, and other one is a general community's understanding. The personal to myself is my dad, he is 98, and 6 years before, all of us were in Colorado. we're having a good life. We came to the country as a former refugee. We had a very limited resources in terms of materialistic measurement, but we have a lot. We ourselves was resourceful, so we were able to buy a house and things of that nature were done. But all of a sudden, my dad went to a doctor's office and he was told that he had a skin problem. And he was told that if he goes to a lower elevated area, that the skin problem could go away. So in that way, he heard only Ohio. He did not hear Florida or California. So he chose to move to Ohio. So in the same way, we moved to Ohio. Dad moved, and again, we have a tradition: the elderly and the elderly member of the family, whenever they make that decision, we follow that choice. We will not even ask question about why and what. So he moved, we followed him. That was the reason for us. But a lot of other members of the community did not do that. When we moved, there are many people who, like my dad, they come, that's one thing. But the biggest reason for people to move here is, number one, as you mentioned, it's a very good place to live. Definitely, no question at all. Number two is inclusive community. And that's personally, I found that one, especially in healthcare, I found really comfortable to go and get services. I always tell this thing. I tell these things I find better than Colorado here in Central Ohio in terms of healthcare. And third thing is a job market. There are a lot of entry-level positions where people who speak language other than English can get those jobs without any difficulties. And the fourth one is housing market. Is affordable housings are available. People, especially for the Bhutanese community, when I talk about, I can quote, this is by a researcher, Lapita Nath. She's doing a research in the Bhutanese community. She gave me the permission to quote. She has not published a research. She told that so far, the highest number of home buyers in this time frame, like short time frame, the Bhutanese community is the highest number of homeowners in this short time frame, according to her research. So like people can buy a house in a very affordable or a manageable rate. All those factors are affecting. And again, when some communities are growing, one person comes, another person comes, they will be navigating the system is a lot more easier than in an isolated area. So I think those multiple layers of factors are there. I cannot be only one. If this is that, I think it's a kind of circle. One after the other follows the other.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Definitely, this is an important mechanism. I'm going to be referring to how immigrant communities show a tremendous amount of resilience in terms of adapting to their new environment and new community. So definitely thank you, Bowen. Last but certainly not least, I want to introduce Mr. Ibrahim Osman. Mr. Ibrahim Osman is not a community leader, and I don't want to steal his thunder, so to speak, but who'll give us the opportunity to introduce himself, what he does, and his experiences here in Central Ohio. Mr. Osman, welcome.
Yes, sir. Well, my name is Ibrahim Osman. I've been here. When we first came to America, we stayed in Connecticut for like about 6 months, then moved to Columbus, Ohio, to be close to our people, like Mahdi said. You know, it's Somali communities is really important for them to come together and help each other out. But as time went by, things changed. It's not the culture adaptation to the culture they used to have become two different cultures. You know, so we moved down here to Columbus, you know, so we can be close to our families, our friends. But as time went by, we started seeing a different influence. You know, so as the influence went by, started taking a different turns, and I ended up, you know, getting into some things that I wasn't supposed to get into. But since then, try to stay out of the way and been here since 2004.
Got it. And, can you tell us a little bit about? Go ahead, Ibrahim. Sorry.
My experience in Ohio is totally different than the experience I had in Connecticut, because Connecticut was not a lot of Somalians, so there was not a lot of influence. We went to school, we came back from the school, we went to the library, then we went to the soccer field. But as I came to Columbus, it's not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people want to go to the library. You know, not a lot of people, you know, want to go to school. You know, you see kids my age, 13, 14, 15, you know, skipping classes, you know, going to the basketball court, just sitting there, you know, playing basketball, smoking their little cigarette and their drugs. So I start following up that route and become a habit for me, you know, just to skip classes whenever, because when it comes to discipline kids in America for the Somalian parent, it becomes complicated. And back home, you used to, you know, discipline them the proper way. Get your steak, whoop them. But over here, it's like they're scared of having the cops get involved, or even children's service get involved, and the kids getting taken from them. So whenever my parents get called about me being in trouble, it's like all they can give is verbal, because they're afraid that if they was put their hands on you, or you show any bruise when you go to school, then it's going to be an issue for them. So I'm because I knew that there was nothing my parents can do to me. I take that to my advantage. Start hanging out with my crews more. Start staying in the streets more. Start selling drugs, get into selling guns. And because what's there? What my parents can do? All I have to say, I will call the cops on you if you guys put your hands on me. Stuff like that. But it become a hobby, and that's the norm for most Somalian kids in America right now, in Central Columbus, Ohio. Because of knowing that their parents, there's nothing they can do to stop them from whatever they're doing. They do whatever they want to do. So I start hanging out with the wrong crews. Take a gun to school. Me and my friend, we took 2 guns to school, and my friend was like, "It's a Friday. Why not just make some money?" We went out, start sticking people, start putting guns on people. We start robbing people. The next thing we know, there was a cop behind us. We got arrested, and that's how I ended up into the juvenile system. I'm from the juvenile system. At the time, because my friend was an adult, so he went to a different place. At the time, I was the only Somalian in the juvenile system, and I have been for almost 3.5 years, almost 3 years, because I had another Somalian came but got released. So the juvenile system, when you're Somalian, you have a different culture, you have a different religion. It's hard for the people that work there to understand you or where you're even coming from, the things that you do without you having to speak the proper English. So when I went in there, it was like only people that talked to me was a guy named Humphrey. He still works at the juvenile. He's getting ready to retire, because other people was like they looked at me as a foreigner, as somebody that's new into the system. And I had even people asking me, "What is African?" Like people that's African American that have never heard of African. So it was different for me, because at the end of the day, I was trying to adjust to the jail system, at the same time to their culture, their way of life, the way they do things, the way they eat foods, the new rules that I had to follow while I was locked up. So it was complicated. The only thing that really get me through was reading books. I never used to read books. I didn't like how to read books. So plus the Humphrey guy is the one that helped me through it. He would tell me like, "Hey, look, this is not you. You Somali. You African. Africans don't do this stuff." You know what I'm saying? We know this is your first time. This is a mistake. This is not who you are. You can do better. So from there on, he will sit down with me whenever he come to my unit. He will just give me some information, give me some knowledge, things that I shouldn't do. As a person that's immigrating in this culture, he will tell me like the reason you people come over here is to give you a better life. He understood the African culture. He's like, the reason people come over here to give you a better life. Why you want to act like you from here? Why you want to do this stuff that you're not supposed to do? So from there on, we started talking. Then I got sentenced to DYS. And that was a whole different ballgame. So now I had my own cell to myself. Now with the DYS is completely open bunks. So now you sleeping with other youths, probably 26 to 30 youths in the one unit. That's when things took sideways, because now me being the only African, mostly I was a target to the African Americans in this country. Because I didn't want to join in again. I didn't want to be part of their club, or I didn't want to give up my food, as they call it, hold down, lay down. I didn't want to do any of those stuff. So I had to fight to protect what was mine, what was my food. So whenever I call my parents, how is everything? Everything is fine. Even though everything was not fine, I will tell them that. Because what was the reason telling them that I'm getting into a fight when there's nothing they can do? So it become a hobby. I will fight. I would say at least I fought for a whole year before they stopped messing with me because they knew I was not going to give up my stuff. And from there I want to become depressed because now it's like, I was used to, fighting, keep me active, occupied. I will fight somebody. I will go to my room where it's only by myself, where I don't have to deal with people. But now nobody's fighting me. So it's become depressed. I'm like, like people don't because of the culture difference. People won't understand where I'm coming from. So I try everything I could, but then that's where I meet a preacher down there. It's like, since you guys have a preacher, why can't we have an imam? Why can we have a Muslim person that come over here, on Sundays, just like they have the preacher? So I take that to my social worker and they start bringing the imam into the place. And that helped me a lot too. And from there, when I got released, after I got released for good behavior, after doing it 2.5 years. And when I came out, it was completely different. It was completely different. I was not everything that I needed before I got locked up. Completely was a different environment. We stayed in Woodrow. The housing was completely destroyed. Like all the people that I knew moved on. Some got locked up. Some got shot. So it was like I wanted to be outside, but at the same time I didn't want to be outside because I'm so used to being locked up, become institutionalized. I didn't know what the word institutionalized meant until I got out of jail. Then I started seeing myself, sleeping, doing some dumb stuff on purpose, just to talk and go back, because I was not used to being outside. I was used to being in a shut down environment where I don't have to come outside to see the sun or people, or I was comfortable with being locked up. So being released, it was like a whole new threat that I had to get used to. I had to find a way to deal with. I had my pro officer Lomax. He was there most of the time. He helped me a lot, but there was a times, where I had nobody to talk to. I knew where someone, but we didn't click like that back then. So I couldn't really reach out to him and ask him for help. I can't ask my parents for help because they didn't really understand what was going through with me. They don't understand that we're institutionalized. They don't understand that when you get locked up, that you get tracked to being locked up, that you want to just continue to get locked up. I know that sounds like something that somebody shouldn't say, but when your body get used to something, that's all you really want to do. You don't want to be around people, and being locked up, it becomes like nothing for you. You won't really mind if you get locked up because you're used to it. You can do the time. Now in your mind, you process that you can do the time. So I didn't really care what I did back then. I fought in front of people while the cops was there just so I can get locked up. I would reach out to my pro officer, hey, we'll sit down with me, but I was afraid to tell him my thought because at the same time I didn't want to get locked up. But at the same time, I was used to being locked up. I didn't mind getting locked up. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So whenever I sit down with my pro, he would ask me about my progress. Tell him I got a job by FedEx working. Tell him I go to Columbus State Community College and started school. But it was never the same because he might understand the criminal justice better than you do, but he can never understand the things that you're going through as somebody that's being locked up and that's a refugee in this country. When you want to do good, but at the same time, it's hard to do good because everybody around you is doing bad. Everybody, the people that you knew, your friends, they're still doing the same stuff, even worse. Before I was here out on the streets, Somalis wasn't killing Somalis, but when I get out, Somalians killing Somalians. So it's like Somalians selling cracks, cokes, all this kind of stuff. But back then it was just weed before I got locked up. So it became a whole different ballgame. Now it's like I have to keep my distance, but at the same time, I want to hang out with the people that's not like a institutionalized, that don't want to get locked up. And those were my friends, but who were at the same time, didn't like the police, that wanted to stay off the streets, but at the same time doing some dumb stuff that would get them locked up. So it become complicated for me to stay out without having a proper mentor. I had to find that in me. I had to find ways to adapt to my new environment to figure out ways that I can improve my life, myself and my family without disappointing my family. So I carry everybody. Pretty much, it took me a while, but I started cutting up when people call me, hey, what you doing? You want to come outside? I would just be like, no, I'm busy. I'm either on the north side or south side, or I'm with my father or my mom doing something, and that's how I was able to strive to do better, even though I will still go out and hang up in the hood, play basketball, do this, do that. When it comes to time to, whether they have the alcohol open in the car, have guns, hey, you want to write? Be like, no, I'm good. That's how I was able to stay out of the way and to start to do better. Is there any questions that you guys have?
Well, there's a ton of questions definitely on my end, and thank you, Ibrahim. I just want to give the audience and the attendees who are listening in the opportunity to say that Mr. Ibrahim has done a phenomenal we call rejuvenation. I know he's right now an entrepreneur and a business owner since leaving the juvenile system. Perhaps you can touch upon that, Ibrahim, about where you are right now and the success you have experienced since being released.
Since I've been released, I worked at the juvenile. After working at the juvenile, I had Somali kids that come out to me. He was like, I shot people, I shot people out. And this is not the first time doing it, what can you do? What can you do to help somebody like me? Cause if I was to tell somebody that work here, I know they will more likely to report me. So what can you do to help me? And I thought about it. I'm like, what can I do to help somebody? That's my people. That's from my culture. Knowing that killing is harming my culture. What can I do to help him without judging him? So I'm like, if you really feel this way, that you want to change, you gotta live your always. Because he's known for selling guns, things like that, drugs, things like that. I'm like, if you really want to change, I can guarantee you I will get you a job. Can you work? Can you do whatever that you do? Can you stop doing whatever that you're doing? And can you work? Because you're still a juvenile. Once you turn 18, all that stuff is gonna be, from after you turn 18 is what's really gonna matter. What's really gonna destroy your life. So can you work? If I was to give you a job where you don't have to worry about somebody firing you, can you work? And he was like, yes, I can work. And then that's when I'm like, I have to figure out ways to help him out, because I give him my word that we can find him a job where he don't have to worry about getting fired. So I tried a couple of things that didn't work. Then I've been doing security for like 7 years. I'm like, why not just open my own security company and just hire him? And that's how I was able to open my own security company. And I hired him, but he's working for me, but it's like it's hard for him to keep him on a job because he's so used to not wanting to do this 8 hours a day shift. He's not used to it. So it's sometimes he will call out for no reason. I will literally have to go to his house and see if the reason why he really called off. So that's how I was able to open my own security company just to keep him on track and other people that needs a job.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, I've got so many questions. We're going to circle back on this, but again, I want to thank you for sharing your life experience with us, Ibrahim. It's remarkable to hear the process you went through. And again, there's a ton of questions that are going to coming your way. But thank you again for that brief introduction. I'm going to, just being sensitive to time, I'm going to move on to ask the next question, or to really for us to understand and unpack, which is if Mr. Mahdi and Mr. Bowen can give us their perspective in terms of the impact the criminal justice system has had at the community level in their respective communities. Can you give us some ideas? Has the community been impacted by the criminal justice system? Ibrahim, who's from the Somali community, appears to indicate that. And what are the mechanisms that are placed within the communities to help individuals that brush up against the criminal justice systems? What are those resources? And perhaps you can even touch upon what are the traditional mechanisms in either the Bhutanese or the Somali communities that are used and are leveraged in terms of interacting with the criminal justice system. So I'm going to start with Mr. Mahdi Warsame to give us an overview on that, and then we'll do a deeper dive.
Thank you, Hannah. First, let me say thank you very much. Congratulations, Ibrahim Osman. You did it. You have been successful since you got out of the juvenile criminal justice system. I think you are a role model for many young men in Witchwood. Thank you very much. When it comes to the Somali community, traditionally, we don't like to go to the court through the court system. Even when we were in Somalia, very few people use the criminal justice system. If they have disputes or if they have issues among themselves, they have what's called a traditional justice system, which is the elders of the community are actually the judges and the prosecutors and the juries. It's an Islamic religion mixed with Somali tradition. That's what they get. They used to be using before they arrived in the United States. So when people come here, they are very reluctant to ask for adjudication or the court system to decide any issue among themselves, particularly if it's not a criminal issue, especially if it's a civil issue. They would like to use the traditional system. The elders mediate their wife and husband. The elders mediate if, like, for example, two Somali businessmen have dispute or money dispute or what have you. So we are a community that are very reluctant to actually use the criminal justice system, let alone going to jail or prison. So that's an issue when it comes to the using or the navigating the criminal justice system. People don't like to be part of it. The second thing is the issue of the navigating the criminal justice system. That's a big challenge because what you have is a large number of community members who have limited English skills. And especially in the juvenile system, there are three issues that I have noticed when I used to go there. Number one, if the child is involved, children's services, you have the children's services on one side, the court on another side, and then the parent. I have seen many parents that what the court does is normally they appoint public defender for the child. Then the children's services will have their own case worker, but nobody's representing the family. The family doesn't have an attorney. Nobody is helping them to navigate the court system. They do have interpreters there, but the job of the interpreter is not to help them navigate the court system because it's against their policy. There's ethics rules that they have to follow, that they cannot discuss anything with the family other than interpreting in front of the court. So I have seen many parents that are lost in the juvenile criminal justice system in Franklin County because some you might say, okay, well, that's the job of the attorney. Many of them don't even know that they have to have attorney for themselves. And then even if the court appoints public defender for the child, we know the time and the resources of the public defenders is very limited. So they are well advised to hire their own attorney, but they are not doing that because they think that if the court is appointing a public defender for the child, that's enough. So I have seen many malpractices in that process. The other issue is the issue of their privacy. There are two issues when it comes to the issue of privacy. When the person is a juvenile, there's a strict privacy involved. No, the outsiders will not know anything about the processes and whether this child is involved in the criminal justice system unless they have a consent from the parent. So even if some of us would like to help, how are you going to find out they are even in the criminal justice system? You will never know. You will never have that information without the parental consent. The other issue involved is the stigma about the parents not, if their children are in the juvenile criminal justice system, they will never share that with a friend or with the family members even, because there's a stigma about talking about your child in the criminal justice system. Even the adults are doing that. So even if there are programs that are there to help these families, it's hard to know who's who and who's involved in the criminal justice system. Another issue I would like to add in my experience is that proportionately, most of the kids who get involved from the Somali community, particularly from the Somali Bantu community, who get involved in the juvenile criminal justice system in Franklin County, are from a particular neighborhood. It's not the whole city. It's not everywhere. You can follow that kid from where they started, from when they arrived in Columbus. If they started in a Capital Park or a Witchwood or a place called Champion or a place here called Capital Park, it's very likely that some of those children will get involved in the criminal justice system. Why? Because that's how the neighborhood was when they arrived. They get hooked up with another American-born kids who were doing the same thing. They befriend with them, and all of a sudden you will see American-born kids mixing with the Somalis in those projects and doing the same thing together. And then Somali parents who don't speak English, who are very new to the country, who have a limited English language skills, who don't even know that children are involved in these things because the children are telling them that everything is fine until it's too late. So where you live is very important. Knowing how to navigate the criminal justice system is very important. And I believe that providing only language services is not enough. There has to be court navigators, just so we have healthcare navigators for the new immigrant communities. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mahdi. That's a lot to unpack, and I feel like this 1 hour is not going to do justice to all the information we've covered. And definitely, there's a topic we're going to come back to in terms of what are the resources or the capacity that may be lacking in the individual communities. And just being short on time, I'm going to move on to Mr. Bowen. And Mr. Bowen, if you can give us, along a similar question to Mr. Mahdi and the Somali community, how is the criminal justice system impacting the Bhutanese community? And what are the traditional mechanisms of coping versus how the community is adapting to their new environment?
Thank you. Again, I can certainly tell that very similar situation with what Mr. Mahdi explained, so that I can break this into 3 different perspectives. The fourth one is I don't have personal experience, and I don't know, I think I'd mentioned you this before I coming to this panel. I have very limited experience in this situation, but I wanted to be part of this because I know there are individuals who are struggling with this thing. So I don't have personal experiences, so that's why I cannot share that portion of it. but I have an experience with the members of the community, some of the members who are experiencing the system. So that from that perspective, I'm going to tell what I'm telling next. So the first is, to my limited knowledge and experience, the justice system of this country or our county or our city in itself is quite complicated for the individuals who are grown up here. From the childhood, they know the system, they know everything else. Even for them to navigate the system is so complicated. When I talk about right now, let me talk about the Bhutanese community, Nepali-speaking Bhutanese communities. For us, we never had an opportunity to make laws, because in Bhutan, it's a country ruled by an individual, that is a king. There's nothing for people to say this is right or that's wrong. Whatever he thinks, that's a law. That's a law made out of his lip. And under that law, we are governed. And also, we never experience in our life ourselves the rule of laws. And what is rule of law, we did not know, because we had an experience. So coming to the United States, this country has a rule of laws. Like if you follow the laws, there are certain things. If you don't follow the laws, there are certain things. I am not advocating and not doing anything else. What does the law has to do? Law has to do whatever is to be done. I am not commenting on that part. But my part here is, what is the members of the community facing under the current system? So in this current system, the systemic problems are there in itself, but the situation within the community is education and awareness. Whenever the situation comes, a difficult situation comes, we think back to ourselves, either to Bhutan or in Nepal, where the justice system is very different. And the third thing is, we were able to navigate that system because the language was not a problem. Here, all these three things are a problem. Number one, language. Number two, culture. And number three, accessing the things. Within that, because of these barriers, the members of the community who are facing the legal systems will have more than three barriers than other population to cross those bridges. Let me give you an example. I have two examples. The case is still active, so I'm not going to give you any identifiable information here. There's a member of our community who was a Nepali-speaking community, not from Bhutanese, but a Nepali-speaking individual who came to this country. And they have a daughter, 13-year-old daughter, 13 or 14 years old daughter. And in our systems, making a girlfriend or boyfriend at that age is foreign. It's very, very different, like usually not allowed, let me say, up to that much only. But this young lady make a boyfriend, came back home, told blah, blah, blah to dad. Dad got mad, he spanked her. And immediately she called 911. And 911 officer came to home, and everything was, because this is normal to make a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, XYZ. And with a warning, 911 guys left. The girl did the same thing next day. They spanked her again. And the police came. That time, they took that girl, because she's young, 13 years, they took to the foster care. They have another child, 4 years old. That child was taken to foster care, and the parents were left home alone. And in a few days' time, the dad, not knowing the system, he found out where the girl was kept in foster home. He went there, where he has a restraining order was there. And by bridging the restraining order, he was automatically warranted, got arrested, and put in the jail. Now, both husband and wife in the jail. Both the kids, they are crying, no, he didn't beat, nothing, XYZ, whatever they are telling, but they're in the system. So my point here is that they had a good time if there was a culturally appropriated interpretation services were provided. I really don't know the first part of it, like spanking and all those whole different things, but I can guarantee that this dad would not have gone to that house looking for his daughter. Like what is restraining order, what is those things. So that is a systemic barrier facing to the individuals, and he has to face the criminal justice system, not because of his own fault. And that part, I'm not telling that first part. First, he made a mistake, so he has to face the consequences. I am not telling the law is wrong or right. That is not my point. But my point here is explaining the law to make sure that the person understands what is restraining order. That is lacking here. And there's one more example, which is, again, the very similar, but very different context. I'm making very short with the respect of time. I think we are limited in time. So the one individual, he had a car accident here in Columbus. I think the case is closed, but again, I'm not bringing out any identifiable information here. This is a publicly available information anyway, but he was in a court, and he has to go to court one day after the other, because month by month he has to go to the court date. So he got tired, and he didn't have a transportation, he didn't have a language, and all those things. He had to navigate those things. So he went and asked somebody else in the court, which I don't know that who is that somebody. What can I do so that I don't have to come again and again? So the person told, if you plead guilty, you'll be done. He went in front of the judge and tell him I'm guilty. And immediately judge closes the case because guilty. So $4,800 of fine, and with the change, some total of $5,500 he paid to our legal system here in the court and whatever. Then came home. And he was relieved, in fact, because he just had to pay money. Now he doesn't have to go to court. It has been all clear. With that in his mind, he came back home. And in 15, 20 days back after, he went to a Home Depot and applied for a job. He got a job. And after 5 days, he was told, don't come to job no more. Go home. And he asked why. And because of your criminal record. Then this guy came to us. He came to me, and he was just literally crying. Like, what do I do? I made a mistake. I paid a fine. I did everything what I was supposed to be doing. He also did community services, and still I cannot do the job. Do you want me to hang? That's what his word. Do you want me to hang? And I later on I bring this to a judge and things like this. No way they can do anything else. It's very, very complicated. That's what in a private consultation with the attorney and things. This very complicated case. I don't want to go further, but here what I'm telling here, my point is, this person would not have pleaded guilty if he had known the consequences. So not knowing the consequences may be a fault. I really don't know, but I think my suggestion or my bigger idea is that we should have a process to educate the members of community. What are the consequences in a the system set up here is that when you have a problem, then only we address the problem. We should have a solution. We should have a process where people are aware of the system, so that either number one, they'll not make a mistake, or even if they make a mistake, they can address it properly.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bowen. We're going to wrap up with the last few comments. I want to, first of all, it's really interesting that both Marty and Bowen have raised an important underlying issue, which is the generational gap between those young people among the communities that were either born here or came here when they were extremely young, and the parents who are trying to navigate a life here in America. So I think that's a topic probably we don't have the time to touch upon, but it nicely segues to my final questions for the panelists, which is, what is the way forward? And starting with Ibrahim, as an individual who has come up against the criminal justice system, what resources would you have loved to have before you've touched the criminal justice? What resources would you have liked to have when you came out of the criminal justice system? So we'll start with you, Mr. Ibrahim.
Yes, I would like to say that if there was like because every kid that's in the system starts at school. Most kids that don't go to school, either they're in the system or they're skipping the school. If they had a mentorship program, where parent was aware that, hey, this is the mentorship program for the youths. If they give you a call, that means your kid's not in school or your kid's in trouble, or you need to show up. If we had that, and the mentorship was working with the school, they would be able also to work with the criminal justice system. Because if they can find the kids in the school and the kids are not home, they will automatically know the kids in the criminal justice system, and therefore they will find a way to work with the criminal justice system to make sure that kids don't repeat the same behavior that put them in the system. So something like that will go a long way, especially for the Somalian communities that don't have the mentorship programs in their school that's working with the parents and the juvenile system and also educating them by the juvenile system and the things that they can do will go a long way to help them out in the future, the kids that's in the system and the kids that might end up in the system to prevent them from going to the system. So something like that, it will go a long way. I mean, I knew Mahdi like us did back in the days, but I had no idea what the things that he did. You know, so if there was more people like that that's working with the kids in the system, out of the system, in the school, out of the school, to make sure that they're keeping them on track, to make sure they have a program for them where it's not just sitting in front of the class after school, just fitting another class and giving them a snack and watching another homework. It would be better to have something like that where they can work with them, educate them about the criminal justice system. Hey, your grades is bad. If you continue to do this, it can either lead to.
I think his internet is low.
Yeah, I think we may have lost Mr. Ibrahim.
If they behave, you don't have to necessarily. I apologize. It's fine. Yeah, something like that will go a long way to help them out.
I appreciate it. Definitely. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. In the last few minutes, I would like if Mahdi and Bowen can briefly summarize some of the resources that they would love to have in their respective community to be more effective in supporting young people and their community members from the criminal justice system. Mr. Mahdi, 2 minutes.
Quickly, for example, when I work for the Bakay Ranch, we have what's called a Somali Outreach Program, and part of that is funded by RMH Board. And part of that program was what's called the acculturation services. So I think the most important program, that one of the most successful programs I have seen in Central Ohio was that acculturation services, which was part of that program. And what acculturation does is it helps the parents to navigate the systems, school systems, core systems, but it also helps the American-born, the parents and their American-born kids to communicate better. Because believe it or not, there's a very huge communication problem between the Americanized, American-born kids and their immigrant parents, like Bowen just mentioned as one of his examples. So anything that will help the community acculturate and understand the systems, whether it's a school system, healthcare system, core system, will go a long way, including helping them understand their American-born children, because there are completely two different perspectives of what life should look like in the United States. Their parents, immigrant parents, are very strict. They would like their children to come home at a certain time, be friends with only a certain among their ethnic group, go to the certain places at certain times. And the children, of course, would like to have more freedom. And culturally, they are completely different generations. So acculturation services, mentoring, and also making sure that when someone is in the system, whatever that system is, especially in the juvenile court system, that they have either a family member who understands the system to guide them through that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahdi. 1 minute, Mr. Bowen, if you can tell us what resources the Bhutanese and the Nepalese communities would love to have to be able to be more effective.
So in a minute, what I can tell you is 3 things. Number 1, access to the system, to the member of communities who are going through the criminal justice system, unfortunately, are the lower status of the members of the community. Those who are already struggling in different aspects of life, and they are the one who are, I'm not telling all, but many of them are where there's already some struggles are there and they are getting these things, and accessibility is not there for them in terms of systemic access, like internet, materials available in the language they understand, and also the person who helps them to navigate the system. That's one. Number two is education. Like if I like contempt of court, that is a word that is very common to us here for the person who are grown up here and known the system here. But the contempt of court is a foreign. They don't know. If they don't go to the court, then they will have to face these consequences. They have no idea. And all those kind of things needs to be make people aware, and education is the second piece. And finally, the third thing is we have an inclusive community in Columbus generally. I doubt there is any individual work for our government in those systems. Always we are trying to understand this community is this. We need to have somebody else there from the community who will help us to navigate the system properly, then hiring in 1 hour, 2 hour interpreters. Again, I'm not blaming the interpreters bad. I'm not telling at all. But the final solution is have to have few individual wherever possible, maybe a clerk or a judge. I don't know what, I don't want to say anything else on that one, but having somebody working there will be the best to navigate the systems. So these are three things in a short, I can tell you, we can simplify the system and address this situation.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Bowen. Thank you, Mr. Mari Warsama. Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim Osman. You have been phenomenal. I've learned a ton. I'm sorry that we don't have enough time to really dive deep into these comments and the points you've raised. These are really important, and I hope this would be the beginning of a more productive and a fruitful conversation. I would also like to thank the attendees who are listening in, who are watching us live. Thank you again for your time. I would like to thank the Franklin County Justice Policy and Programming for hosting this event with us. And of course, Wendy for supporting and making sure technically we're in good stead. Well, thank you all. Wendy, anything else we need to do on our end?
Excellent. No, you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great one, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.